President of the United States, but votes are still being counted. And it should have been the world's biggest IPO. We asked what went wrong with Ant Group's listing. Hello and welcome to Asia Business Report. I'm Karishma Vaswani. We still don't have a result in the US election, but Joe Biden has won Wisconsin and is projected to win Michigan. He now has an easier path to the White House than Mr. Trump. But the Trump campaign has launched legal action to stop the count in Michigan and Pennsylvania. It's already demanded a recount in Wisconsin. With no clear winner yet and votes still being counted, markets have been on a roller coaster ride. Wall Street closed higher overnight, and our business reporter Samira Hussain has more from New York.
If you look at the way financial markets have traded overnight and into today, well, we saw a lot of volatility. I think what we had seen earlier in the week is that U.S. financial markets were really pricing in this idea that there was going to be a clear victory for Vice President Biden. But because that didn't come to fruition, you saw a lot of volatility on global markets. You saw that even when European markets opened for trading, there were some big falls, but eventually they gained some of those big losses. And then when you came to New York and New York opened for trading, within the first several hours, we saw that markets were up by, in some cases, by some 600 points.
Samira, we talk about this all the time, that stimulus package. What's the likelihood of another one passing, given what we're facing in terms of the election outcome?
Oh, it's so interesting because leading up to this election, we saw that there was a lot of to and froing between Democrats and Republicans. And now we have seen that the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, has said that he is now keen to pass a stimulus package, which was a very different tune he was singing just before the election. So it seems like there might be that kind of stimulus package. There is still some bipartisan support for elements in that package. But again, what is going to be up in the air is just how big it's going to be. But the fact that we're seeing that the leader of the Senate has said that he wants to pass some sort of stimulus package is really a move in the right direction.
Samira Hussain there. Well, today should have seen the biggest stock market debut in history, as Jack Ma's Ant Group was set to sell around $35 billion worth of shares in Shanghai and Hong Kong. But at the 11th hour, Chinese authorities halted the listing, citing what they're calling, quote, major issues. Pretty much everything about Ant is major, though, with Alipay having some 1.3 billion users, mostly in China. And to give you a sense of just how big Alipay is, the app handled, check it out, $17.6 trillion in payments in the year to June. It's not just digital payments. Ant also does wealth management, lending, credit scoring, and insurance. I spoke to Drew Bernstein, whose company has been offering accounting services to Chinese companies for almost 40 years. He told me why the IPO was postponed.
This deal was not only cleared for takeoff, I mean, the wheels were literally off the ground. But by the same token, this is a very pervasive, this company has very pervasive business practices in the sense that they touch on every industry. It's difficult to understand whether it's a tech company or a bank or an insurance company. In my firm, my employees use this for everything, right? Insurance, credit card payments, everything, just at the tap of their smartphone.
Yeah, Drew, just on that, Jack Ma says that Ant is a tech company, not a financial services company. Is that how Chinese regulators see it?
Well, I think really what happened here is when they sat down at the table, at the end of the day, they weren't able to check all the boxes. This is a really, really big deal, but I don't think that China is going to bend for any one deal. They're not going to put their financial systems at risk for one deal. And this is one of the largest deals ever done. And I think they just want to be able to get it right.
What's it going to take for Ant to list again? Is that a possibility? How far away are we from that?
It will take a little bit of time. I think it will come because don't forget, this deal, I think, was 284 times oversubscribed. Almost $3 trillion worth of interest, in this company. So I think it's likely to go, but it's going to take some time based on everything that we've been able to read. The company's going to have to restructure somewhat, maybe commit some more capital to the loan division, apply for some more licenses, and then they'll be able to come back to market. But obviously, there's an enormous amount of interest. Everybody, all the investors seem to want a piece of Ant. I think they just want to be able to get some clarity on what they're going to be buying into.
Well, analysts and investors are seeing the suspension as a last-minute ambush by China's regulators and an attempt to cut Jack Ma and his empire down to size. Let's bring in our business reporter, Suranjana Tiwari. We just heard about the concerns, Suranjana, raised around the company, but how much of this is about the man himself?
Well, Karishma, I think that's the $35 billion question, isn't it? I mean, Jack Ma is this larger-than-life character, was a school teacher, built the Alibaba empire, and now Ant Group is his next project. But he's also very controversial.
Yeah, I've got to say, every time I've met him or been in the same room as him, Suranjana, at various World Economic events, World Economic Forum events, I should say, in China, you really get the sense of the cult of the personality that's been built around Jack Ma. He just has to walk into a room, and there are so many young people in China who look up to him as this sort of inspirational figure. But I've also heard analysis that, all of a sudden, Jack Ma's become a bigger personality than the man in charge of China, Xi Jinping. And that's perhaps the reason why the analysis is that we've seen this kind of pressure on the company.
That's exactly the chatter that's coming out of this. Of course, we won't ever know probably what's actually going on. But as you said, Jack Ma represents a lot for younger people, but he also represents a lot for the private sector. He is the embodiment of what the private sector can do and how it can really bring services to ordinary people in China. And that goes up against the Chinese Communist Party's idea of the state owning things, controlling things like banks and financial institutions. So, there is an element of a personality here, but I spoke to Duncan Clark, who wrote a biography of Jack Ma. He knows him, he's met him, and he said if it was about Jack Ma as the person, then this was a very expensive way to do things, and most of all, it really affects the reputation of China and the financial services industry there. So it might be more about the company that we've heard already than Jack Ma itself.
Yeah, it's precisely that, Suranjana. I think that point about control and how Chinese officials want to regulate the financial sector in China is key to all of this, because ultimately it's a question of whether Jack Ma sees Ant as a tech company, which is consistently what he said, and what China sees it as, which is a financial services company. But we'll be sure to get a better idea of how Jack Ma's Alibaba is doing when it reports earnings later tonight. Suranjana, thanks for all of that. Now, moving on, after U.S. markets close, that's when we will get those results I was telling you about. But before we go, a recap of our top story this morning. The U.S. presidential election hangs in the balance, as we've been telling you. We still don't know who's emerged as the winner, but just a few hours ago, we heard from Joe Biden speaking at his campaign headquarters. Have a listen.
After a long night of counting, it's clear that we're winning enough states to reach 270 electoral votes needed to win the presidency. I'm not here to declare that we've won, but I am here to report that when the count is finished, we believe we will be the winners.
Joe Biden there, Will. You can see the vice president's message was one of unity, really strong sense of his conviction that he will win. But it's not over till all the votes are counted. And already we've heard from President Trump that he is mounting those legal challenges to any end result. All of this having an impact on investors' nerves around the world. We'll be watching all of those twists and turns for you right here on Asia Business Report on BBC World News. Do tune in to the next edition. That's it from us.
All our lives have changed. How we live, work, and shop. And with these changes, a new economy is emerging, from the fields to warehouses to the parcel at your door. New business models are replacing the old. Which sectors will prosper and which will fail? Join us as we examine in depth what lies ahead for business in the age of COVID-19. New Economy on BBC World News and online.
Fire away, please, your question.
Still bringing people together.
Our audience members join us from Cambodia, France, Indonesia, Liberia.
Still asking questions.
Will bigger government intervention in the economy be the norm?
Still getting answers.
We never had such an experience in our lives.
I actually disagree.
I'm quite worried.
Your voice?
This is going to be a collective idea.
Still heard. Global Questions, this weekend on BBC World News.